Hey everybody, welcome to a new video. If you're new to my channel, my name is Adrian Fields and I am an expat entrepreneur that's been living in Bali for the past 3 years. In this video today, I want to talk to you honestly, kind of friend to friend and extemporaneously about the good and the bad of moving to Bali in your 20s or 30s, which is what I did. Now that the borders have reopened and people are pouring back in, I noticed on my flight just last week when I took a vacation for a month coming back to Bali that my plane was nearly full. So I see also from the traffic that a lot of people are coming back into Bali, and I'm sure that as the months move forward and it gets even easier with less restrictions, there are going to be tons of digital nomads, expats, etc. wanting to come back to Bali. So let me tell you a little bit about my history and my point of view, because I'm obviously giving my subjective perspective on all of this and it might be completely different from yours. So I moved to Bali when I was 29 years old and I had already lived in Thailand before that, in Mexico. I own a business that permits me to live anywhere in the world. I can run my business from the internet basically. Not basically, but I can run my business from the internet. So I chose Bali because I really loved it. I had visited it for the first time a few years before I actually committed to moving here, and I really fell in love with it. Of course, that was on a vacation, and I spent some time in Ubud, and I spent some time in Uluwatu, and I think like most people, when you come to Bali for the first time, you fall in love with it because it's a magical place. 3 years later, my perspective has changed a bit, and I'm not 100% sure how much of that has to do with being here during the pandemic and not leaving during 2.5 years. Finally, a month ago, I left for the first time because the restrictions were opened up, and I went to Turkey and I went to Spain for a month total. And coming back to Bali, I was actually devastated to leave Spain. Like, I was crying when I passed immigration. I really didn't want to come back because I had certain realizations. I'm going to get to that towards the end of this video, but first let's talk about the many reasons of why you might want to move to Bali in your 20s or 30s. So if you're a digital nomad, or if you're someone who earns income online and you have the freedom to live anywhere in the world, Bali makes a lot of sense. First of all, why would you stay in a Western country where the cost of living is so high? Let's say your wages, your salary is, average. Let's say you're earning a couple thousand euros, dollars, whatever, a month, and in Bali you can live very comfortably on that, but in the West you would live like a pauper. So I think that is one of the main reasons and incentives for people to come to move to Bali. I mean, look around me at the lifestyle that I have. I live in a gorgeous villa with a pool, with a staff. I could not afford this lifestyle in a developed Western country. If I moved back to, let's say, Los Angeles, I would not be living anywhere near this grandly. So that, again, I think is probably the number one reason why people choose to move, not just to Bali, but to other places like Thailand or Mexico or other digital nomad hotspots. Now, the reason that I think people choose Bali specifically is because it is quite foreigner friendly. Bahasa Indonesia is a very easy language to learn, but even if you don't learn it, English is sufficient to get around and do pretty much everything. Furthermore, there's quite a large community of expats and digital nomads here. I mean, Canggu specifically became famous as the #1 destination for nomads and expats, and that's because it has all of the resources and kinds of things that expats would want and look for. I mean, it has healthy food, it has gyms, it has the infrastructure that you would want, all of these kinds of things. So for me, again, this is why I've chosen Bali as my home base. And what are some of the other reasons of why you might want to move to Bali in your 20s or 30s? Well, I mean, if you're a surfer, if you love the beach, if you like to go out, Bali also has all of those things to offer. So it's kind of a work and play destination. Now, me, I'm like a special case. I'm a bit of an alien here in Bali. I don't particularly feel like I fit in super well. I don't socialize very much because I don't really like to drink. So therefore, I'm not going out and partying. I'm not going out to bars. A lot of my life revolves around just being healthy, going to the gym, playing tennis, eating well. And I have to say, I can do all of those things in Bali, and it's really nice. What I noticed, though, is that my life it feels monotonous, and I feel like a retiree at my young age. And when I went to Europe, I kind of had a wake-up call of, like, what am I doing with my life? You know, I'm barely dating in Bali, and the dating pool is really bad. It's bad if you're straight, and it's even worse if you're not straight. Let me put it that way. There's so many memes out there. I just saw one yesterday on the Canggu poll, which you have to follow if you are even considering moving to Canggu. And it was something that they repurposed about Los Angeles, but to summarize, basically said that Canggu is full of transplants looking for themselves, but really just spending all of their time drinking champagne and like are commitment phobic. And that is totally the case. I have, I think, more experience dating locals than boule, which is the word for expats. But yeah, I've not had great experience dating here over the last 3 years. I'm still single. However, when I went to Spain and spent a couple weeks there, I had like reverse culture shock because I've been living in Asia for over 4 years. I am gay, and being in Spain, witnessing how open LGBT whatever stuff is there, like men holding hands, all of this, it really warmed my heart. And I was able to date a lot. I was able to meet a lot more people there in Spain, and because I was in Madrid mostly, you meet people who are a bit more serious and a bit more stable than the people who are here in Bali, because Bali either attracts tourists, so they're just passing through, or it attracts what I call lost souls. I mean, again, people who are coming here to kind of like find themselves but are broken in some way. It's a big generalization, but I kind of have to stand by it. So I think that the biggest reason not to move to Bali in your 20s or 30s is if you are single, because the dating here is just awful. Again, and worse if you are gay by a million. So I don't want to talk too much about that because this is also like a taboo subject in Indonesia, and I don't want to get in trouble. But suffice it to say, I realized after being in Spain that I cannot live in Bali year-round. I really need kind of a mix of Western culture and my life here in Bali, just because if I'm here in Bali all year round, it is so monotonous and I feel like my brain is decaying. There's a lot that I love about Bali and a lot that I have to be very grateful for. The cheap cost of living has allowed me to invest deeper into my business, to grow my business, whereas if I was living in a Western country, a lot of my income would be eaten just by cost of living. However, there is a trade-off, and there are certain things that I really am finding less and less tolerable about Bali, such as just the weather. I'm not someone who likes the humidity here, which again, you could say, well, Adrian, you're stupid. I mean, why are you living in Bali anyway? You know that that's what the weather is. But it's over time gotten less and less tolerable. And when I was, for example, again in Spain and just able to breathe like fresh, drier, comparatively air and walk around parks and things like that, I realized how much I missed that. And again, the kind of liberalism in terms of things that you can do in Europe versus things that you can do in Asia. I won't get into that specifically because also that's another subject that can get me in trouble. I just think that in general, you really have to weigh the pros and cons of whether or not this type of lifestyle is really suited for you in the long term. I mean, most people, they're not coming here like me and staying for years. They're coming here maybe for 6 months at a time or something. And 6 months is totally doable. You know, in 6 months, you're not going to get tired of Bali, especially now that borders are opening again. You have a wider variety of people that you can meet. But when you really set up a home base here like I have, you just realize there are certain limitations to this life as a single person who is still youthful. Yes, I live in a big giant house, but I live here alone, so I don't need all of this space. One of the realizations that I had in Spain, renting a one-bedroom apartment, was that was sufficient for me, and I didn't have a pembantu, which means maid. You know, I did my own grocery shopping and I did my own dishes, because when you have a dishwashing machine and you have a laundry machine in your apartment, you don't need staff, you don't need people to help you. So again, there are certain trade-offs and there are certain things that you think, Bali, you're living the dream lifestyle, you have staff, you have a big house, you have a pool, you have all of these things. You know, you go around in a motorbike, but the reality behind that is there's a lot of traffic here that's getting worse and worse, the congestion with more people coming in because the roads are so narrow. The roads are very dangerous. It's also a bit annoying to have to manage staff. I know that that is a total luxury to say, and it seems very out of touch, but I'm someone who doesn't necessarily like having people in their house. But at the same time, I cannot manage a big house like this all by myself. It's just every day, like somehow it gets dirty. Anyway, these are just the kind of things that were on the top of my mind, and I just wanted to share with you because I really do believe with the rebirth of working from home and working from remotely as well, especially, I don't think the work will ever go back to necessarily what it was pre-pandemic. Bali is going to be on the top of a lot of people's minds to live, and I just think that everyone should be aware of, you know, the reality of the situation, that it's not all flowers and floating breakfast trays and beautiful landscapes. There is another side of Bali that you don't get to understand until you've lived here for long term. But if you're not coming here long term, you probably don't care. But if you're coming here and you're thinking, oh, I want to set up my base in Bali, which is also not so easy to do nowadays with, you know, making sure that you're visa and tax compliant, you just kind of have to know that there's a big chunk of life if you're coming from the West that you may end up missing. That's definitely my case, and why already I booked a flight to go back to Spain next month, because I realize how much I actually value the specific experience that I can get in Europe that I cannot get here in Bali. So if you spend maybe half the year, or you don't even necessarily need to maybe spend half the year, but if you spend 3-4 months of the year out of Bali, I think perfect, you know, because then you appreciate Bali for what it has to offer. But if you are here all year round, it can get very monotonous. And again, as a young person, if you are single, I think it's one of the worst places to be. Unless really you just love to get drunk and you love to go and party and hook up, then maybe it's not that bad. But you really have to do some soul searching and find out where you need to be in your life, where you are, what your priorities are. I know for me now in my early 30s, my priority is really to find a partnership, a relationship, and a committed, you know, life partner. And I don't think I'm gonna find that in Bali, to be completely honest. Maybe I can import them to Bali, like maybe if I find them in Europe, I can convince them to move here with me. But yeah, in terms of the dating scene, whether it's locals or non-locals, thumbs down from me. That's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope it's given you some context without being overly negative, but I think that I've come to build a kind of reputation on my channel for speaking the truth, and that is just something that I always do. I don't know how to be any other way other than share my version of the truth. Again, completely subjective. I am a young, single, gay man living in Bali, so this is my perception of reality, may be completely different from your own, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But in any case, I hope that this video enlightened you in some small way. So thank you for watching, and until the next video, take care. I'll see you later.